So good afternoon. My name is Matt Coyle. This is Ying Coyle. We are local real estate agents at Cameron Real Estate in Massachusetts. And we're here with Albert Inamorati. Albert is a home inspector in Massachusetts and
A member of ASHI.
member of ASHI. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that, Ying. I appreciate that, Matt.
Great.
Nice introduction.
So I'll let you talk more about your business if you have something to adding.
Sure. Who is Abbey Inspection Service Incorporated? Well, it's now approximately 30 years. I was 30 when I started. I'm now 60, so you can do the math.
Exactly.
The brief overview in the background, I started as a construction supervisor in a family business in 1985. 5 years after working in that business, doing everything from labor work all the way up to supervising, I ended up working to the point where I was kind of exhausted with the construction adversarial contractor grade of thinking. So I decided to start a home inspection business and work on my own. And I've been doing that since 1990. So 5 years as a construction supervisor working in a family business, and then working now as a home inspector, a licensed Massachusetts inspector for 30 years. So approximately would say 30 years time, I've probably done close to 10,000 home inspections since I started.
That is awesome.
That's great.
Great experience.
What incident started this whole career, I didn't really feel that this was something I wanted to do in the beginning until I realized I had a friend of mine who had a failed expectation with a builder, and he got about 100% of his payment to the builder with about 50% of his home completed. And he wasn't getting anywhere because the building inspector for the town was insulated because he doesn't have any liability. So he's insulated from taking on any responsibility for that. So I got called in to just look at the construction that he had to that point, and it was very poor. It was incomplete. It was undersized. In many cases, the lumber was not properly sized, and he ended up in a real bad way in not being able to finish the home that he started, and he had no more money to do so. So there you go. That started Abbey Inspection Service from that point on.
That's
so it's
good.
more of an advocacy thing that I started back then, representing the buyer. Prior to that, I was in school in Utah. Working to become a advocate, a consumer advocate. That was my background. Economics and consumer advocacy was my background. So this actually fit nicely because it's working towards developing a relationship with buyers and helping them through that process. So,
Oh, that's very interesting. 30 years. That's quite an accomplishment for anybody. So
Ying, in our conversation about before coronavirus and after coronavirus and how things to kind of take a dip and take more time and have things being delayed. I'm making more recommendations up front to people about how to be safe rather than what to expect at a home inspection, to be honest. So before it was just, I would try to identify the expectations, make sure that I was understanding what their needs were, because at some point you don't know if they're hoping for you to find every single thing under the roof. In other words, I'm looking for bugs, I'm looking for the radon levels, I'm looking for the structure and the mechanicals. So you have to try to align their expectations with what you actually can do. I'm not a person who can see through walls, right? So we have to try to, that was my main focus. Today, it's just trying to make sure that there's something built into our practice that's procedurally taking care of safety first. There's plenty of advice coming, obviously, from large numbers of people in organizations, right, under these extreme conditions, such that it's for a good reason. I understand the reason. I'm taking it very seriously. It's not something to be taken lightly. And I know that home inspectors and home inspection is a vital part of the home purchase. So we believe, like the American Society of Home Inspectors believes, that we can continue under this COVID-19 outbreak, but we have to be prudent, and then we have to be safe, to take precautions, and then make sure that we perform the inspection in a way it doesn't conflict with what the government's recommendations are.
are you doing anything differently today than before the virus?
That's an interesting case. It's a case-by-case basis. Obviously, I'm looking to make sure that we can enter the property safely, and I want to do that first and foremost. Is the situation acceptable? So as far as the home inspector, we schedule the inspection, you know, if we feel that there's a, you know, if there's no issues with feeling sick, you know, symptoms of respiratory illness or something like that. So yeah, we have to obviously bring the soaps, the bacterial soaps. That's very important. We use hand sanitizers after we enter the house. You know, we use it after we leave every bathroom. We wipe down every knob in window that we touch. We try to eliminate avoiding everything that we don't need to. I mean, that's certainly important. We can try to identify.
That must add a considerable amount of time on your part when you're doing these inspections.
It is. And the other thing I was going to mention is we have to try to recommend to the buyers that if they don't need to attend, which is very foreign practice, they shouldn't attend, or they should stay outside, wait for the end of the inspection where we can summarize. And in doing so, it obviously be helpful to everyone, I think, in the process. But then they have to trust us a little bit more in how we do our job.
Yeah, and they have to understand what you guys are doing and what is the difference with COVID-19.
Everyone involved in this inspection process is responsible, obviously, for helping us forge ahead during this time. So we need to follow the advice and recommendations set by the appropriate, you know, the CDC, you know, the NIH, the World Health Organization, and people who should be aware that this is a situation. It's changing constantly, right? So we're just trying to stay up with it every day to do our job. And it's a serious issue we find ourselves in. So who would have thought this, right?
No,
who would have thought this even a month ago?
No, it's hard to imagine even today. So, quick question for you though. So have you seen any slowdown in your business as a result of this?
Well, I have for a period here within the last, I would say between March 15th and April 1st. However, prior to that, I was doing, I think 14 inspections between March 1st and March 15th. I think I had 14 inspections in 15 days. Then I saw the dip, considerable dip, I would say noticeable. And then within the last 7 days, it's back to normal. So that's a little odd.
Yeah.
So it seems like you're kind of benefiting, and I'm speculating here. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're benefiting from a backlog that was built up earlier in the year. And do we really have a sense of what the inventory is going to look like in the next month or so?
No, the inventory would be obviously the concern. I think in this, even prior to this, because we had a significant number of buyers looking for properties that didn't exist. And Ying is obviously aware that the numbers do matter, and you need a house for every buyer, and it's a shortage. I think that would be a case that we would have been under regardless of this happened. It's my sense and my take.
Great.
We just have to reflect back on whether or not they're going to allow buyers in the door. And obviously that's going to be playing a part. So I think what's happening to your point, Matt, it kind of helps to understand where the surge has come from in the last week. I think it's everybody who's had their house listed have already moved, because 90% of the houses out of those 7 houses I did this week were vacant.
I think you read my mind. That was my next question is, how are the sellers receiving inspectors these days? And I guess
they're rescheduling. To be honest, they're rescheduling if they have anybody in the house that's not well. We're just we're trying to make arrangements that there's no children or pets or anybody in the building during the home inspection, and the sellers have to be aware that those are the situations that they have to be respectful of for a buyer as well as myself to go in. We ask them to basically do general cleaning, sanitizing, so that we don't we don't have to be exposed as well. So is that new?
Is that new, Albert?
That's fairly new to have the sellers be responsible for that type of an upkeep requested by us in the industry.
Are you asking for like a professional cleaning and like, I guess, proof of that, or how you approaching that?
It's not something we're putting demand on. It like I said, it was fortunate in the cases that I've had that there's already been vacancies. Gotcha. So, and some of them have been more than 6 months. And that's
Wow.
that's obviously, I know that Ying and I had one in Lexington recently that was also that case. I don't know, it was considerable amount of time since they occupied, right, Lynn? Right, Ying?
Yeah, they're already moved out and it's vacant.
Right.
The good thing I think last time you did is you send out a video to the buyers. What will be the procedure will be when you goes to the, you know, property and they know what they expect. That really helped a lot.
It helped a lot in that particular case. We did have the buyers present, both buyers and yourself. So there was 4 of us in the house. A suggestion has been brought up recently that the buyers stay outside and the home inspector is the only person in. Let's put it this way. We're asking them not to attend if they need to, but if they need to, obviously they need to use the hand sanitizers before entering and leaving the home as well. Touch as few things as possible and let the heavy lifting be done by the inspector. I can touch certain numbers of windows as long as I can feel comfortable that there's no problems with them. I won't. And I can leave them, and I can assume that the buyers are aware of the limitation. So.
Yeah. So these will be just temporary changes, right? Do you say these will be going forward? We're gonna be using all these, you know, attentions, details. Do they keep doing it?
Like your sanitation, I guess, prevention measures you're taking, do you expect that to continue into the future?
I can't believe that that's going to be the norm. However, it has brought an awareness to my, you know, to my practice and my procedures, and in the standard of operating procedure here could be, you know, could be that we don't do quite as much during the inspection as I used to. I mean, Ying knows as well that our standards, hers as a real estate agent and mine as a home inspector, we go beyond the standards to help the clients and rectify any issues. You don't want surprises. The last thing a homeowner wants is a surprise. So it does make it more aware, it allows me more of a feeling for how much time do I really need to spend to get to the nitty gritty. It may be less after this.
Right.
Because if I'm going beyond,
yeah, we talked about the, you know, realtor is still essential. Home inspector, you're not counted as essential, right, in that regard. But you still gonna have to do what you have to do. You cannot be the bottleneck. So whenever you are needed, you just go.
Yeah, so we have that non-essential status, unfortunately, because, you know, obviously it seems to us that we would be essential in all situations, but there's a small amount of what's the word I'm looking for? There's a small amount of discrepancy in that standard for the state that says if a person is going to be discriminated against, and it affects the community as a whole, that we become essential. And we know that the buyer is a consumer, and it can't be something that they're going to be discriminated against from purchasing a home. That's a really serious question. I mean, that goes back to the redlining way back in the day, you know.
Right.
Where buyers were limited to certain mortgages because they were not as well, you know, they weren't as affluent. So this goes back to that consumer recommendation that people do not get discriminated against. And in this case, they're a buyer and they can't be discriminated against buying a home. It's an American right?
So Albert, what do you think you want my buyers or sellers, you know, to know?
Well, my only thoughts are obviously to know that we're there for them as professionals in this industry. You've got attorneys and real estate agents and home inspectors who have, you know, numerous tasks, exterminators, radon technicians and contractors, and then you also have the mortgage originators. Everyone's a professional. And by working together, I think we can provide the necessary services our community needs while attempting to keep everyone safe.
Well said.
Just one last thing, Albert. So, you know, obviously buying a house is a rare occurrence for most people. How do you recommend people go about choosing a home inspector? What would you look for?
Good question. There's a whole host of different certifications that are necessary under Massachusetts for providing services. Exterminators, they have a license. A home inspector has a license. So under the professional regulations in Massachusetts, they've pretty much identified the quality of inspector. So as long as that person is either on that Massachusetts standard licensing list, or if they're members of the American Society of Home Inspectors, is another great choice to have to choose from. And that's under the American Society of Home Inspectors, and it's homeinspector.org, I believe.
Okay.
So that's about what I think, you know, we can do under these situations and make it available to every buyer that's going to be looking for our services. We can try to identify that need.
And
Great.
you will still always open, right? You're not gonna close your door.
So long as the guidelines are that Massachusetts doesn't feel that we need to, we will be around to do this work.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
I appreciate your time.
Great.
I'm gonna